guys, it's October, and that means it's time to pause and rank some classic scary movie franchises. We're going to kick this whole thing off with my favorite scary movie franchise, the Scream series. So for me, I grew up, was in high school in the 90s, so this was the scary movie franchise of my formative years, so it's always stuck with me. It is the one that I love. But just so you know, in the coming weeks, I'm going to rank the Halloween movies, the Evil Dead movies, the Saw movies. I got several great rankings coming, so if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button if you want to see those in the coming weeks. And as always, put your rankings down below in the comment section. Let's get a lively discussion, see where we got some differences and some stuff, and also recommend some franchises that perhaps I should try and rank. Someone recommend Chucky. I'm strongly thinking about doing the Chucky movies over the next month as well. That one will probably be in November if I'm able to pull that one off. With that said, let's start talking about the Scream movies. Before we start talking about them, and specifically, I want to talk about the series in general and why I like the series so much. And a big part of it is just the general idea of it. Of what they did with it is having the slasher, the killer that's taking people out. So you have the scares in it, but it's also self-referential and meta, so you have a humor to it. And then what makes it a little bit more intriguing on a story side than most slasher films for me is the fact that if there's a mystery to each of them, is who's the killer, how many killers there are, and you're trying to figure out additional elements as opposed to it just being, you know, it's Mike Myers, you know, it's Jason Voorhees, what's he going to do this time? There's other elements to it that kind of give it some extra weight. Also, I think all four movies have great casts. I was starting to write my notes for each of the individual movies. I was like, man, Scream 2 has a great cast. Scream 3 has a great cast, and it was, wait, all of these have a great ensemble cast and individual stars that have gone on to bigger, better things. And so all around, this is a series that I think it just works on a lot of different levels, whether that's the scares, the humor, a killer that's actually could be killed, that doesn't just keep coming back. Several different things about it that just make it appeal more to me than some other series that if they work for you, that's awesome. This is the one that works the best for me. With that said, let's look at how Rotten Tomatoes ranked these Scream movies. Coming in fourth place is Scream 3 with 36%, so pretty low. Coming in third place is Scream 4 with 59%, just missing out on a fresh rating there. Then we get to our top two, a little bit of an upset here. Coming in second place is Scream with 79%, and coming in first place is Scream 2 with 81%. So a little bit of an upset there. I know the first one is beloved, and the reason I know that, I put out a Twitter poll to ask you guys what's the best one and what's the worst one. You guys chimed in, gave your thoughts on it a little bit. And if you want to know, before I put these rankings out, I almost always put a Twitter poll up. So if you want to participate in those, please join me over on Twitter, follow my channel. But I put the Twitter poll for what's the best Scream movie. 83% said Scream 1. And then Scream 2 and 3, each of them only got 4%, and then Scream 4 got 9%. So definitively, Scream 1 is the one that got by far the biggest praise from my super scientific poll on the internet. And then as for which one is the worst, nobody went for 1, nobody went for 2, 63% went for Scream 3, and with 37% was Scream 4. Now, there's only 8 votes on that, so that one isn't scientific like the other one. Just kidding, neither one is scientific. Just a little bit of your guys' insight and input to where things are at. With all that said, let's dive in and look at my ranking of the Scream movies. Coming in at number 4 for me is going to be Scream 3. Now, I think this is a very watchable movie. It's not a bad movie per se, but I feel like the creative juices started to run out a little bit. And so then as you're watching it, it feels like we're trying to rehash things. We're trying to be clever, as opposed to in parts 1 and 2, it just was clever. They just had a good idea and they ran with it. Here, they're trying to outdo themselves with some things and try and give extra layers and depth and twists and turns that just started to stretch plausibility even further than we went with the first 2 films. And so that's kind of a problem. And also, I think of the 4 movies, this one has the weakest intro. So I think 1, 2, and 4 all have really cool, awesome intros that are clever in what they do with it, interesting. This one's more shocking. It's not clever really at all. It's just starts off with a kill, and it's shocking that they kind of go straight for a character, a beloved character in Cotton Weary, but it's not interesting in what it does with it, as opposed to, I mean, that first opening scene is so memorable. And then just kind of the second one, also memorable, shocking in its own way. And then the fourth one, it just goes kind of crazy, bonkers, weird, meta on so many different levels that makes it work. This one, it's just a kill. So in that sense, it's not a bad sequence. It's just the weakest of the intros. And the thing for me that just kind of really drags this one down for me is the whole middle act of this movie is this mystery into Sidney Prescott's mother and her trip to California and Hollywood and the backstory and who did she sleep with and what did she do and all this stuff that just, I don't care. It's like a backstory on a character that we've never met, that we never really liked. She was never a good person. And so you're just kind of watching it being like, why are you giving us so much information, so much backstory on one of the least interesting aspects of this franchise? So all in all, this movie, watchable, still got some funny moments, got a couple good scares in there, a couple clever things. It's nice to see Patrick Dempsey show up. But the weakest of the films for me. Hey guys, real quick before I dive in and give you my top 3 Scream movies, I want to tell you the number one way, I put 2 fingers out, the number one way that you can support my channel, and that's to support me directly financially on Patreon. Patreon is essentially just a place where you can kind of support my channel. It has a closed door community there where you guys get special input to my channel, some exclusive content, some access to kind of have conversations with me, give some input. But the key thing is if you love what I'm doing and want to help me continue doing it, supporting me on Patreon is the number one way you can do that. And through my Patreon supporters, I was able to actually get actual lights for this, a green screen, some stuff to just kind of take my level to the next level. Actually, kind of these cool blue lights behind me. That's because my Patreon supporters kind of help me take the channel up to the next level. If you want to help me do that, please consider supporting me on there. With that said, let's get back to Scream. Coming in at number 3 for me is going to be Scream 4. So this one had about a 10, 11 year gap between this one and the previous one. And with that, you had our main characters from the original film are now older in their mid-30s. And so we got a new batch of high schoolers, plus we have our old batch of characters. And all in all, like the third one, very watchable. I thought this one had a lot more cleverness to it and wit, like they had a refreshing of ideas because of that gap of time. And so a lot of the, especially like that intro and the clever sorts of stuff they did with it, I thought that was very smart. And it was commenting on the meta nature in it, inside of being meta in and of itself. There was a lot of fun. There's some stuff with the internet and webcam and some internet type things that they did with it. I really enjoyed those aspects of it. Like all the movies, great cast. And so their cast of young actors and actresses, amazing. Like if you're going to go in the year 2011, get a young batch of actors and actresses to be the new teenagers, great batch. That like you got a great cast of them. Charming, pleasant. I loved what they did with them. I think the problem here, the biggest problem I had with this one is, or 2 problems. Number 1, the movie felt torn between this movie's about our new characters and this movie's about our old characters. And so it felt like it shifted kind of heavily between the 2 of them at different times. And it didn't feel like it flowed super nicely between the 2 of them. It wasn't smooth transition between the 2. It was kind of clunky, like we're spending a lot of time with Sydney. Now we're spending a lot of time with Hayden and Emma. It's just kind of pretty big shifts between them. And so that was kind of frustrating for me and kind of the way some of that played out. And then the other one is I didn't feel it had enough newness to its, not satire, but its commentary on horror movies. So when the original came out, it was right after, 15 years of slasher movies. It's just the classic era of these big slasher icons. And then we get Scream making all sorts of commentary, meta humor about those movies while being in love with those movies and being a great example of those movies in the genre. So it's this wonderful blend of all of that. This one comes 15 years after the original, and it's really just an update. It's Scream 2.0 in what it did in the format of things. It wasn't like a new commentary on what took place in horror movies between the original Scream and when this movie came out. And so it felt a little bit like a wasted opportunity there. Very enjoyable, very pleasant return. But when I'm in the mood to watch a Scream movie, I almost always go to number 1 and number 2, and not so much this one. But when I rewatched it, it made me think I really do should watch this one more, in particular because of the younger cast and some of the funness in that part of things. Moving up the list to number 2, and that is Scream 2. This is a great sequel. This is a great horror sequel that knows where sequels fail, and it knows where sequels succeed, and it has fun with all of that, and it comments on all of it and finds ways to intertwine the jokes, the humor into it, while having, once again, another mystery and playing into the dialogue that was kind of going on in the 90s about violence in cinema, and it ties that into the meta humor of the type of story that they were telling, and bring in a new batch of wonderful actors. You got like Timothy Olyphant showing in this, Sarah Michelle Gellar showing up in it. So all in all, once again, a great Scream movie, a great sequel, and a great continuation of the themes and ideas of the original. And it just kind of doesn't skip a beat. This is like a franchise firing on all cylinders, coming right off the momentum and the excitement and creativity of the original one, right straight into another great film in the genre. And so, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that opening sequence in it, where they're at the hotel, or excuse me, hotel, I don't know why I said hotel, while they're at the movie theater, and Jada Pinkett Smith, and they're watching the movie that is of the first movie. Just all of it kind of plays out really nicely to just kind of like pulls you in. It's horrifying, it's shocking in kind of what's happening, and it's interesting. And then we go into the story of it, and we don't see our characters in the same setting. We see them growing up. They've changed. The genre of this movie is the same. The humor's the same, but it's not just a rehash of the first one because of the nature of the different settings and stages of life where everyone's at. So it brings new dynamics to everything, which one of the things that the series kind of always did well is that while all very much feeling like Scream movies, they all have such different context of when they take place in the stage of life. And so you get different perspectives in each of them. So all in all, I thoroughly enjoy this movie. It's a great companion to the first one. And kind of when I see Rotten Tomatoes has this one slightly edging out the first Scream movie, and I know some other people, they prefer this one over the first one. And I think I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from. But for me, coming in at number 1 is going to be Scream 1, the original one. And this is my favorite scary movie of all time. I've watched this one more than any other scary movie. Rewatch it probably a little bit too much. My wife kind of harasses me about that a little bit. But just right from the get-go, the opening sequence, they bring in Drew Barrymore, you know, one of the biggest names that they had on the poster. They put her on the poster, and you just have this shocking opening sequence that's clever, it's fun, it's iconic, and just kind of, do you like scary movies? What's your favorite scary movie? All that fun stuff. People quote it, people know the voice, and just instantly made Ghostface this new killer kind of out there. And we kill off Drew Barrymore in the opening scene of the movie, and it's so iconic in the way it transpires. And then the movie continues on and lives up to the excitement, the thrills of that opening sequence, in so many different ways. This movie launched that Kevin Williams era of quipping high schooler self-referential horror movies that went throughout the early zeros, not early zeros, from the late 90s or through the mid 90s through the early zeros. That's where it is. And he actually wrote a whole bunch of them. And so that's my era of horror movies, and this one kicked it off, and this is, I would say, the king of that batch of movies. And just the inherent nature of the cleverness of making it so it's not just, this unstoppable force that keeps killing people. No, it's a mystery. Who is the killer? Who are the killers? Why are they the killers? And so there's intrigue in the story, and there's a mystery, and you're trying to piece things together. You're learning things. There's red herrings, whereas misdirects kind of set up this whole template of how to have a slasher movie that's scary, that has all sorts of teenagers and college students getting hacked away, killed off in clever ways. But you're invested a little bit more in the progression of what's happening throughout the story. This one kicked that off. Like every movie in this series, you look at the cast and there's so many familiar faces for that era moving forward. All in all, a great scary movie that's incredibly watchable, that started a franchise of all, at the worst, it's watchable, and it's just a little bit rehashes a few too many things and has too much convoluted of a plot. Kicks off a great franchise. It is my number 1. But that's that's my ranking. How about you? Tell me your list down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. It is my favorite scary movie series, so I'd like to talk about a little bit different perspectives and where different people are on some of this. And looking at my polls on the internet, there's some people out there that disagree with me and put some interesting ones as their favorite. I would love to know why someone has Scream 3 as their favorite, but I don't see it. But I can understand. I would love to have a conversation with you about that. If you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, like the one you're watching right now. But the key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So join me in the comment section. Let's have a lively discussion, and thank you so much for watching.